guys ready? This is so awesome. I'm going to tell you once I. Now that's okay. I'm going to bring you back gradually. I'm just going to keep talking until people start realizing that
They're all excited.
All right. Don't make me bust out the Lord be with you, okay? But I'm super excited. You guys are so awesome, and I just wanted to reflect to you as I walked out there. The feeling, the energy, and the excitement that I'm feeling out of you guys in this room is fantastic, and I really want to reflect that back to you. That this is something amazing. So, tell me what you're talking about. What, Joe?
I'll let you say that to all of us.
Even if I do, so what? Yeah.
Can you state the original question
So,
again? Just to make sure we're answering.
that's okay. How does your community guide members in their faith lives? Does your community guide members in their faith lives?
Well, we were thinking that for adults, Adult Forum is probably our best forum for something like that. And then Sunday school and EYC as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just because those are the main places where you can sit and talk about faith lives and how things connect.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Other thoughts?
I thought we were talking about how we felt we had been.
Guided?
Because we talked about what we
That's also okay. Yeah.
sermons.
Sermons?
Because we have such great sermons.
You do have great sermons. That is so true.
And liturgy.
Liturgy?
Sermons are fine.
They're fine. You know, I would say in my family we call that the F word. Don't use the F word with me.
Yeah, all I'm gonna say is, unless it's a bad sermon, it's not gonna deter me from it being lifted up by the liturgy.
Right.
So, the sermon is a plus, and it always seems to be here in Holy Family. But the liturgy is the bomb, baby.
Yeah. The liturgy is the bomb.
So, you were talking about, well, how does the church guide us? I think the church can provide us opportunities, but we actually have to take command of our own journey. And what everybody here can do is provide opportunities for you to explore that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that goes along with like what we were talking about, like opportunities for Bible study and adult formation and things, but then finding the time for yourself, and in like young adults group, finding the time to take advantage of those opportunities, which can be hard if you have to work or you have small children to get out of the house, and finding ways to take advantage of those opportunities.
Right.
And are there other ways
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that we could do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a discussion of some appreciation of the Episcopal Church's, the liturgy is the bomb, right? So there's really good theology and liturgy that really keeps us in the Episcopal Church, but then just maybe some jealousy for how some of our evangelical friends might have community, right? I mentioned a friend, and Michelle had someone as well, right, where they have a growth group, small group type thing, and it's not necessarily program. They're not necessarily coming together to study the book of Luke or something like that, although that is also valuable, but just some people to do life together, right? That it might feel sometimes like you have to join a committee or you have to attend a program for several weeks in order to find community, but just a little harder to find just people to know you and do life with you.
Yeah, and so that's really a specific question I'm going to ask you. Do you feel like this is a place where you are guided along a journey with your relationship with God and each other?
To be honest, and this is not a critique of this community and probably just more about me, I feel like this is the place where I come and plug in and do my thing, do my spiritual thing. And it's been less about connecting with other people to do that. It's like my relationship with the liturgy and my response to the liturgy. The notes I make on the bulletin when I'm listening to the sermon, like my parallel sermon, I'm telling myself about the lectionary and my
Right.
thoughts about what the preacher is saying. And some of that might be my life circumstances and my reticence to open up and share, but some of it might also be that I haven't found the places where it feels natural to connect to other people and talk together about what we've got to talk or whatever.
Right.
For me, in another tradition, the Lutheran tradition, there was a Bible study every Sunday, and that was work of someone, clergy person or someone to like prepare and people could sort of come and passively participate without preparation ahead of time or whatever. But it was also a place where people would open up and share or ask questions and discussions could spontaneously happen. And I have not found that as much here, but that might in part be because I live far away and can't come to 5 p.m. events as often or meeting time events as often, or that I just haven't looked for it or helped create it yet.
Right. And so that brings a couple of questions to me. And one is, do you feel more like you're responsible for your spiritual journey? And then this is one of those places that sort of plugs into your spiritual journey, versus potentially this being a place that said, here's how you can plug into a larger spiritual journey that we've already sort of imagined, and then you can find your place along that spiritual journey, and we will help guide you in that. And so that's sort of, you might already guess, that's sort of what I might suggest to you, that if you will, digital ministry can do for you. The other part of that is, and several of you have said this, you have to be present to win, right? And so, like, a lot of times people don't have the time, the energy, the inclination, the geographic location to engage in in-person activities that are designed to help you along your spiritual path. But there could be ways that you could help people engage. I know you have an online Bible study, but it's also possible that you can create an online spiritual journey for people that includes ways to be present and be part of the community. And that can also, again, wherever people are on their membership spectrum. So some people might be committed members who moved away, committed members who are in a nursing home, committed members who have small children right now and they just really cannot get themselves. We have a member in my small congregation who's the manager of a grocery store, right? And so he can't come all that often on Sunday, but he's very connected to the community. So to create digital ways that people can plug in to deepening their spiritual lives, and then offering along the way, these are things that you can be involved in. But beyond that, and I'm going to pass out this, the idea that this is what church is for. When we're explaining church, that the idea is that we are creating a place, because I'm a runner, I always like to say, it's like the gym, right? We're here and the equipment is here, right? And other people are here doing the same stuff with the same equipment. And you are welcome to come on your physical journey here. But we also have classes and we can help you, and we have nutritionists. And if you are here because you want to learn how to eat better, learn how to run, learn how to do the weights, learn how to swim, get classes for your kids, get classes for yourself, then we're gonna pass this thing out and you can find your way and we will plug you in. If you need a personal trainer, you get a personal trainer. If you wanna come for swim classes for your kids, you're here for swim classes for your kids. By the way, here's something for you while your kids are in their swim class, right? That this is about connecting you ultimately, again, to your relationship with God and where that is and how it can grow no matter who you are or how long you have been here, but also connecting you as you are able and as you want to with the life of this church. And that could be, again, this is the, I need to keep one of these for myself so I know what I'm talking about. That can be, again, both the ultimate, which is why are we in church, right? What is church for? And the way that you can take, if you will, the stuff of church and turn it into the good stuff of church. And so part of that is using digital tools. And this also goes back to, you can use digital tools even with people who don't want to use them themselves, right? Or who don't want to be part of this, by creating these journeys and by creating, if you will, workflows. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to explain that in a second, to help know where people are and what people need. And now I forgot what I was going to say. The other part of that is your own leadership in this. So one of the things about changing a church structure is, right now you belong to a sort of a typical, program-centered church. I'm going to tell you a little bit secret. There are several words that I would like to ban from church, and one of them is program. Another one of them is outreach, and another one of them is stewardship. But those are other talks for other times. But part of it is this idea that church is like that. There's a couple of people at the top that you pay money for that do most of the work of the church, and then everybody else sort of at the bottom or somewhere along the bottom who basically are, taking advantage of that, right? Or helping to distribute how that work happens. So part of what is wonderful about being able to use digital tools is that you can create these kind of paths. You can decide, this could be part of your path and your ministry as vestry members, to say, how do we create these kind of spiritual paths for people, and how do we connect them? And again, you don't have to start from scratch. I'm going to keep picking on the Altar Guild. We were just talking about this, about how, for instance, within Planning Center, you can create a group called Altar Guild, and those people can be taking part in that group on their little Church Center app with their group, but you can do things like add resources and add messages and be able to converse with one another, and not just say who's on the schedule this week, but this is where we talk about the meaning of, what is a paten and what is a chalice and why is that important and what does that have to do with the Eucharist and your life as part of the Eucharist. That being part of the Altar Guild can be a stop on your spiritual journey if you want to go deeper into what liturgy means, if you have a calling to sacred vessels and that sort of thing, and that you can create that as a, if you will, affinity group where people are collected in that space. And again, in my mind, people could be part of the Altar Guild and actually never be here, right? But really learn deeply about what that means for service at the altar, in terms of the furnishings and everything else, and how that is important with our life and God. And they could be a full participant without actually ever being the person who puts that up there. And that each one of the groups that you have can be part of that stop along the way. And then you have a different way to invite people into those experiences. Even people, they may not want to get up in front of the whole church and read, but you could have a lectors group that is essentially a Bible study, right? Where you're looking at the readings every single week. You can do that within your Church Center group. So again, people who aren't here, or people who have a passing interest in it, can actually be part of this group and be delving into the weekly scripture together, using digital resources, but also, of course, come to church and read as well and be part of this as well. That you can create a whole bunch of little spaces. And again, vestry itself can be about how are we crafting spiritual journeys for the people that are members of this congregation. And so then what does giving money have to do with that spiritual journey? What does the annual meeting have to do with that spiritual journey? And so when you're discussing those things, that can become, first of all, you can create a spiritual space that you're in as leaders of this church, and also then you can help connect other people no matter where they are in their spiritual journey. Okay, and then again, why of church? Beyond the stuff of church, then again, then that whole idea, I don't know about you, but I feel like this sort of crushing sort of administrative organizational load, does, and we were just talking about that as well. You can take something that might feel exhausting, like I'm a leader, and so therefore I'm a leader of this church, and all that really means is I have like endless meetings to go to, and endless schedules to attend to, and that sort of thing. Instead, you can sort of rethink how and why you are in this organization and what it has to do with your relationship with God. You can engage everybody in saying like, I have a part of this, I have a part of this, I have a part of this, so they can share that load amongst yourselves. And frankly, you can stop putting it all on your clergy and your parish administrator, who are like, that they become the point at the top where they're engaging with everything from the bulletin to attendance to the minutia of stuff. Whereas to me, ideally, your parish administrator is somebody who is spinning all the plates and making sure that they're all spinning and that everybody has what they need, but you're in those plates, right? And your clergy are basically what I like to call clergy consultants. Your clergy are there to be around to help support you. How do we do this? I will say that's how I serve at the church that I serve at. I get paid up by the hour. So I'm there 2 Sundays a month where I do Eucharist or whatever we're doing on 2 Sundays a month. And then I don't go to any meetings. I don't have a key to the church. And they always laugh at me because I don't have a key to the church, because I'm like, it is your church, it is not my church. I'm your consultant. When someone's in the hospital, everybody else arranges going to see them, getting them food, whatever. If they need me to go to the hospital, they call me and say, this person needs communion at the hospital. Also, they pay me, incidentally, to go to the hospital, which is an hour and a half away from where I live, the hospital that they go to. And if they need me at a vestry meeting, they pay me to come to the vestry meeting, and they tell me why I'm at the vestry meeting, right? We need a consult on this. We need to understand this theologically. We need, some guidance. And then I come and I do that. Tomorrow I'm doing tech training for them to help them all get on Planning Center and teaching them how they're going to do their bulletin using Planning Center. And they're paying me for that. But otherwise, they're in charge of everything that happens at their church, right? And I realize you're a different kind of church, but I will also say this is, again, how digital thinking and digital tools should change the way that you consider what it even means to be church, and absolutely what the work of church is, and how you do it together. All right, that's a lot. So, first thoughts and questions, then I'm going to show you one more thing, and then, look, it's noon. Thoughts and questions about that?
I have a question. How do you handle pushback? I, as I mentioned, small business owner, I am on the computer at least 8 hours a day. I'm on my phone, so church is not a place that I affiliate with my digital life.
Right.
And I love Church Center, it's been great so far. I'm more than happy to participate in that, but I'm relatively young compared to our congregation. If I have those feelings, how maybe would other communities have, other age groups have feelings about that. So as the vestry in leading this charge, how are we equipped to handle pushback or,
That's a really good question. And it's also the first thing that everybody always says. I just want you to know that, and so first of all, not everyone is going to get on board with this. I mean, it's just like, this is absolutely the truth, right? And so, but I always think, this is why I put gap equals opportunity. So, the first question I always ask is who, right? Find out who this doesn't work for, right? That's the second thing I always say. The first thing I always say is, this is, when we start with, particularly this is the difference between Planning Center and Church Center. So Planning Center is your church office, basically, and Church Center is the church itself, where people are in. So in a way, this is about the leadership engaging with a much more sort of everybody engaged with the leadership and the organization of the church. And so it's much more about the leadership. And I know not everyone in the leadership is going to go for this either. But then the second thing is, find out who the people are who are not gonna go for this. I showed a couple of you yesterday how I got my 82-year-old member with dementia into the directory last week. And then I also think that that itself becomes a wonderful opportunity to say, this is where that person is on their spiritual journey, right? And so how are we going to particularly engage with people who do not want to be engaged in a digital way at all? It's the same thing that goes to how people who don't want any of their data collected, they don't want to be part of the directory, but then that gives you an opportunity to say, this is a segment of our population, and these are the individual people in it who are not going to engage in this way. How are we going to craft a spiritual journey that works for them, right? And so so again, I told this story last night too, but not to everybody. In 2007, when I lived in Wichita, Kansas, and was the rector of a church, there came this idea that we could put the newsletter out via email, which was huge pushback. No one wants the newsletter to come out via email, right? And nobody's gonna read it. And what about all those people who don't have email? And so, or aren't connected or don't have a computer? And so what I said to them is, who are those people, right? And so then we identified them, and there were 10 people. And they were all different people. So what we decided, first of all, was we were going to print out 20 copies of the newsletter, and then 10 of them are going to just go in the back of the church for people who want to pick them up. And 10 of them, we were going to either hand deliver them or make sure that they got mailed out to those people. What that did was it increased the connection between those people and the life of the church. So it was a way in which digital ministry helped to connect people who weren't going to use digital ministry, right? So it is also a way, again, no one is forcing anybody. This is like an invitation into a whole different way to understand how it is that you do church. And again, I think it comes from the center first. It comes from people who are the leaders of the ministries. I also think it gives this huge opportunity for your ministry. This is how you raise up ministry in your congregation. You know, we talk about lay ministry, and I have a friend who always says, whenever we talk about lay ministry, we're really talking about whether lay people can do the job that clergy are supposed to be doing, right? Because of the fact that we don't have, for the most part, actual, real paths for lay ministry to occur. You know, so we don't really talk about what that would mean to support the raising up of the ministry of your laity. And this includes your ministry and other people's ministries. So one of the things I think it was on the other one, insight potential. So it's not just the knitting group, right? So there may be people in your congregation who really want a contemplative prayer group, or they want an opportunity for contemplative prayer. It is your way to both identify that and then support people saying, I've got a contemplative prayer group. And by doing it through Church Center and Planning Center, it's not this enormous kind of administrative thing. So then you have to send it to Julie, or you have to send it to Sarah or Angela and say, this person's interested in this, and then one of them has to call that person, and then they have to organize, and they have to. So if they have a way to be able to communicate with you all, and then, or communicate within these groups, then you have an unlimited amount of groups. And then they can say to the vestry, or to any one of you individually, or to each other, like, I want to start a group on Planning Center, and I'm going to call it Contemplative Prayer. And so you can support that person doing that, and then that becomes part of you all crafting spiritual journeys that say, and we have a Contemplative Prayer group. And so, and of course that person can be part of that, and they probably would then lead that group. But in that sense, you could have 50 groups, you could have 100 groups, and people would be able to not be crushed by administrative oversight of that, but still be able to offer it to other people, or whatever it is that they're called to. Or within those groups, again, you can raise up that leadership. So, but to answer your question, always and forever, there's going to be pushback, and there's going to be people who do not want to do this. And then you just respect them, and you use it for a pastoral opportunity, and you use it for a way to help figure out how you're going to do this. Thank you for that. What else?
I just want to say a huge amount, I think, depends on it working well and easily.
I can't hear you.
It must work well and easily.
Right.
I think that for me personally, a lot of the pushback is so much frustration at all the times when I'm told that such and such requires a click, 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 2 easy steps, you'll be in, and it's not easy. It's hours of my time. It's more stuff.
Right.
It's a username and a password to do something that used to just do it.
Right. Right.
And I'm getting used to it. I'm
Yes.
getting used to apps.
Yes.
You know, but
Yes.
Yes, a lot depends on whether it works easily and smoothly and intuitively.
Yes.
Because this is not only happening here, it's happening in every part of life.
Exactly.
Swim team has an app, your school has an app,
Right.
your job has an app, your
Right.
doctor has an app, your dentist has an app, your GM
Right.
has a different app. And so
Yes.
I definitely see all that it can make possible, but there is also a lot of fatigue.
Right.
That's what you're saying, which password for which one,
Right.
when I can't find it. And before it all just came to your email inbox, where it was all, they wash and stuff, but at least it was all in one place. And
Right.
I was telling Abigail last Sunday that I needed to move the Church Center app from the second screen of mine to the first one.
Yeah.
Because we overlooked an acolyte thing.
Right.
But it's because there's like a whole screen of other apps here, and then
Right.
Church Center on the second page.
Right.
And so we didn't see the acolyte thing.
Right.
So I think it will be important to talk about this.
Yes.
And to allow people to process what is challenging about it.
Right.
Because it's in every single part of life that people
Exactly.
are being asked to make these adjustments.
Exactly.
Some people can embrace it, and some people want to try, but it's overwhelming.
Right. Exactly.
That's a really important point, because we've been talking about digital stuff here at the church a lot. I remember sitting in a meeting one time, and 3 or 4 older women just said, I need someone to sit with me and teach me how to do that. And I know
Yeah.
you guys are doing that,
Yeah.
but I think that's gonna be ongoing, needing some
Yes.
time.
Yes, you're bringing me all the way to my final thing that I'm going to say, so that's very awesome, which is how we're going to do this together, right? How I'm going to help you do this. So yes, and I totally hear that, and I totally hear the fatigue around that. I also said this already to Ivis, that like the first thing that happens is holy chaos, right? Like this is what I'm talking with you guys about, and what you've actually already started by getting onto Planning Center and Church Center is basically like reimagining the whole way in which church exists, right? So like that's huge, right? And I keep saying it because I believe that it's true, that like when you get to the other side of this, it's going to be awesome. But for a long time, it's not going to be awesome. And in fact, the whole transition to Planning Center and Church Center has already, like you're already in the midst of that holy chaos, because as I said to somebody last night, it is like you have to all get in the pool. Like you can't actually start using it until you start using it, but it's impossible for me to be able to like set it up for everybody to be able to use without you using it first and saying, oh my God, this is not going to work. This is totally overwhelming me. This needs to work better. That's actually a feature, not a bug, as they say in the technical world. And so, and again, this is where you come in. This is where I think that the vestry can take on the leadership of this, and also people who are in charge of ministries now can also take on leadership of this to both figure out how it's going to work for them, and then figure out how it's going to work for other people. It's where I can help you, but it's also where, yes, any change and any transition is going to be overwhelming at first. And it may be overwhelming for a long time, right? And I was just saying that I was comparing it with these guys to liturgy itself, right? You take a person off the street and you bring them in here and you start explaining how we do worship and why, much less like Holy Week or something else, and eyes are gonna glaze over and they're gonna run out screaming, right? Before they get the chance to experience the beauty and the meaning and the gravity and the amazing, overwhelming grace of just participating in liturgy. And so in my mind, that's what you're aiming for. You know, that this experience for people is not frustrating, but it helps that they say, oh, this is so great because it connects me to something that is really important. So obviously we're not there yet, but that would be the goal. And I would say the reason is because, I mean, really, frankly, you have no choice. You don't have to do this. But I am going to say that this, back to what I started talking to you about last night. Churches are collapsing, right? The way that we do church now no longer works, full stop. And whenever I say that, people nod in agreement, and then they say, well, our church is growing, and your church is not growing. It's not growing enough to change the trends of what's happening in church overall. The time frame for churches to continue to exist doing business the way they do business, and what I mean by that is the stuff of church, which is the mid-20th century organizational structure, is much shorter than you think it is, right? We lost almost half our membership since the pandemic, right? And the trend had already started. The Episcopal Church did some statistics up until the pandemic, right? And so membership was already in free fall before the pandemic hit. And then post-pandemic, it hasn't really changed the trajectory. So you can't just blame the pandemic, although it certainly didn't help things. But for us to be able to have enough members to continue to keep church going the way it has been going, and frankly, not kill your clergy and not kill your parish administrators, because one of the things about the heaviness of the stuff of church is that more and more of us are busy. Fewer and fewer people in the pews who have the time and the inclination to take on leadership roles means all of that stuff is going on to a few handfuls of people who are already at the capacity of being able to handle that level of trying to keep all these things going that used to go by themselves in the 50s and 60s, and then gradually they come down to where we only have a handful of people that we can afford to pay to do that stuff, but they do not possibly have the capacity to do that stuff the way it used to be done. And your membership no longer has the capacity to spend hours and hours at church doing these things, right? And people don't have wives who don't work, who are spending all of their time at church, that kind of thing. And so, again, I'm not trying to bully you into doing it the way I think you should do it, but I am gonna be completely honest with you that if we don't change fundamentally how church is done and why church is done, then the runway is shorter than you think it is before churches will just cease to exist the way they are existing. And I hate that. I love church, right? But that's also the mission of my ministry. So that's why the invitation into what might not be comfortable and might not be easy, but could transform the way that you do and think and feel about church, while maintaining Sunday liturgy in person, the way you've always done it. It will not disrupt the Bible study that you already have, the Sunday school that you already have, that sort of thing. It will make it, ideally, easier and more meaningful for you to connect with and for other people to connect with. So, I'm going to show you one last thing. And then before I go, I do want to talk about, and I will leave you with this, I'm here, I am your consultant, right? This is what I've been doing digital rehab with you for 1.5 years now, and I will hopefully, well, I don't know. The plan is that I'll be done by the end of 2024, and that you guys will be happily on your way and be doing all of this stuff. And I want to work with you to figure out, if you are interested in doing some of these things that I'm talking about, how I would meet with you, probably virtually because I live on the other side of the state, to help you feel comfortable about learning about how Planning Center works and learning about how Church Center works, so that you're empowered to help the rest of the congregation learn how this goes. And so I want to talk about that.
I keep hearing about Planning Center. I don't know what that is. Do all of us have to learn Planning Center separate from Church Center? Or is that?
Yeah, so that's one of the big things to learn. So Planning Center is sort of the back end of it all. So Planning Center is the admin organizational part of the church management software. That is the main product, if you will. It's the church management software. It's called Planning Center. And that is for the administration and organization of the church. So that's where everything is set up. It's like the administrator's office. So this is where you add people to your database. This is where you put in workflows. This is where you make lists and forms and basically create things. And then Church Center is the congregational facing part of that. So Church Center is the church itself. So my analogy is Planning Center is like all the things you do to get ready for liturgy. So it is like the altar guild. It is like everything you do backstage before the liturgy begins. It's the music, it's how you plan that and all of that kind of stuff, except you do it online. And then Church Center is liturgy itself. It's facing the congregation. It is what's available to the congregation to interact with. So Church Center is is the app or the website application that the congregation, including you, opens to see what the calendar is, where the directory is, where their groups are. You can message in Church Center, and you can create events if you're allowed to, and you can change your own information. But Planning Center is where you put new members in, you tag people, you make lists, so they're both part of the same thing. So in my mind, yes, you would all be on Planning Center, that each of you would have a part that you would take part in terms of how you would organize and administrate. And I would also think that leaders of particular groups would also be part of Planning Center as well. So they would be part of actually putting this stuff in. So this is the difference between sending an email to the parish administrator and saying, can you send out an email to everybody and let them know this? Instead, you would have the ability to say, I want to send out a message to my people in my group, and I'm in charge of doing that, right? And like I said yesterday, it's the difference between if people want to use a room, you set up a system and a template so that you have a form, so everybody fills out a form, and then when you fill out that form, it automatically gives you the reminders. Well, if you use this room, you're going to need to turn the lights on, you're going to need to have a key, you're going to need to do this, and you're going to need to do this. It automatically is set up. So in Planning Center is where you decide if someone's going to use this space, what are all the things that they need to worry about? And then you put that in the form. And then in Church Center, you fill out the form and it sends you the reminders of what it is that you need to do. And so if you're a lector, then you have resources that show you where all the readings are, where all the pronunciation guides are, and all that kind of stuff. But if you're the leader, you're a leader in the lectors group, then you go in Planning Center and say, what are the resources that people need, and how do I connect them? Does that make sense?
Yes, and I hope that I don't have, I mean,
You don't have
what
to.
I just said about learning one app is, no, wait, learn 2 apps. But I
Right.
can see the benefit of everything you just said.
Yes, right, and that's why, having said all of that, hang on, I have to type and talk at the same time. So having said all of that, and I will also say, this has happened 100% of the times that I have met with congregations, vestries, regardless of what I have talked to them about, which is that I come here and I talk about something and people are like, that's awesome. This is so cool. This is really getting at what we're, and then when I say like, then you'd have to do this and then you'd have to do this, and they'd be like, oh, so then I can imagine like why I wouldn't want to do that or why other people, and then by the time I'm done, they're like, that was really interesting, Kathy, but we're just going to keep everything the way it used to be. And that's just how it goes. And I totally get that. Nobody is forcing you to do this, right? In fact, you can do away with Planning Center and Church Center tomorrow, although at this point that might cause other problems. And it is an invitation into holy chaos, because it is an invitation into actual transformation. You can't change things without changing things. Nobody wants to change things. It's very hard to change things, and changing things brings up an enormous amount of anxiety and, longing for the old days. You know that joke. How many Episcopalians does it take to change a light bulb?
10.
3.
Oh.
1 to change a light bulb, 1 to mix the drinks, and 1 to talk about how good the old light bulb was. Go ahead.
Quick question related to what you were saying before. I could see real holy chaos if the person setting something up in Planning Center didn't know exactly how to do it,
Right.
did it incorrectly, and then
Right.
created a mess for everybody else. So
Right.
it's like, would someone actually who knows how, because I can think it through, it doesn't seem hard,
Right.
but I'm sure I'll do it incorrectly because I don't know, that's not what I know.
Right.
And so who's gonna check before you send out and set up a system that doesn't work?
First of all, that's such a great question. Thank you. So first of all, the system is already set up for the most part. So it's just a matter of like refining it and learning how to use it. Second of all, one of the really good things about Planning Center is there's only a few people who are what's called system administrators that could basically change anything or do anything, and you're not one of them. Right. So third of all, there are different, you can become an administrator of just one section, and so that's what I recommend. So I personally recommend that. And I know already that for music, you use the product on Planning Center that's called Services, which does have a lot more complexity. And Chelsea is like a whiz at that. But I personally think that for the most part, that groups and calendar is the only 2 areas that most people would have to to be engaged with. So that already limits where you're going to go on Planning Center. Then you would get administrator privileges for that particular thing, but they even have, it's so particular that they even have, if you have administrator privileges, it says, do you want to give them privileges for everybody in people, which would mean the whole database? And we would basically say, no, you can't have privileges over the entire database. Partially because that way you can't actually make a mistake that's going to affect or change the whole thing.
They even say in that field, like, you can make this person assistant administrator role database, but we think that's a
Yeah,
really
it's
bad
not
idea.
advised.
That's basically what
It is
says.
not advisable. And then I will also say though, you probably will make mistakes. And this is where, you know, I put my tech training hat on to say, like, mistakes are your friend. You want to make mistakes. Mistakes are data to figure out how you're going to do this. And most of the people that I talk with who are scared and who say, like, I don't want to, I can't figure out tech, they're scared. I'm accidentally going to send out an email to everybody that I didn't mean to send. Okay, you might, right? And what the result of that will be is you'll learn how to send out an email to not to do that again, right? It helps you figure out, and most of the people already who asked me questions last night and today came already equipped with the answers, right? It's just a matter of figuring out what the answers are. And it can be overwhelming. It can feel like, oh, there's all these buttons. What if I push this button and it explodes the whole thing? I always say, you can't break the internet. That's not what that means, first of all. Second of all, even literally, you can't break it, right? You can push all the buttons and it's going to be okay, right? But that's a really good question. So come and look at this last thing I have for you.
You want to put it up on the screen?
No, that's okay. I know, it's so hard. And I'm still talking. So, yes, I know. Come, I'm going to invite you all around. I'm going to stop filming to just show you.